Alright, so after watching the next episode of Star vs. the Forces of Evil Escape from the Pie Folk, I kind of wish I'd just gone ahead and reviewed this one along with the last one, but I couldn't have because I hadn't watched this one yet by the time that I reviewed the last one, because these two episodes kind of flow right into each other. They really would have been suited for one review. I honestly don't have a lot to talk about in this particular video, which is not to say that I didn't enjoy this episode, that I didn't find things to enjoy in it. It just wasn't what I expected. I expected it to be a more self-contained story than what we got. The episode opens with Star, Marco, and River still on their quest to find Moon, following up on the lead that Star discovered at the end of the previous episode. They have gone to Pie Island dressed as typical pie folk in an attempt to find Moon there somewhere. They don't really have a more specific lead than that, but at least it's a lead, which is better than what they've had up until now. Immediately, though, they start getting scammed by the pie folk. There's a really funny gag in this episode where Marco gets scammed really badly by a monkey multiple times, and then the monkey turns out to belong to somebody that we know is pretty good. But they do end up getting scammed pretty much immediately, culminating in them being tricked by someone who seems to be just a small, helpless villager, but turns out to be the Pie King, and he captures them and even goes so far as to literally auction them off to a cloaked figure in the crowd who we are supposed to at first think is Moon, but it turns out to be Fool Duke, because Fool Duke is one of the pie folk, and she and I had to actually stop and try to remember his name for a second, Reberiat, are there visiting her parents, who are scamming Reberiat out of everything he owns. It was a very funny scene. It was made better by the revelation that she actually owns the monkey, or the monkey is her partner, or something, which was pretty great. It was great seeing Fool Duke again, just in general. She's always amusing whenever she's on screen. This is a little convenient. It's a little convenient that Fool Duke, an ally to Star and her friends, turns out to be one of the pie folk, turns out to be there to save her when she screws up pretty badly, but it works well enough for the plot that I don't mind. And Star is able to ask Fool Duke about the pie, about the pattern on the pie, and if she knows where Moon might be. But this is when Fool Duke reveals that a lot of pie folk make pies that way. It's a very traditional pie folk way of making pies. And honestly, at this point, I thought that my coincidence theory that I mentioned at the end of the last review was true, that this was just something that Moon coincidentally did. I didn't even consider the twist that we end up getting at the end of this episode. In fact, there's a couple of really good twists in this episode. This was another full 22-minute double episode, and at about this point in the episode, at about the halfway point in the episode, they start to head out, at least for the time being, defeated. Their leads completely exhausted, Star is left feeling dejected. But then as they're passing over a volcano, where I guess the pie folk make all of their pies, or at the very least most of their pies, for sale out in the rest of Muni, Star gets a whiff of one of the pies and recognizes that it can only be one that her mother is making. So, at the halfway point of this 22-minute episode, at the point where a regular length episode would stop, the episode continues. Star and company set down in this volcano, and Star finds her mom. She doesn't have her memories, or at least she doesn't have most of her memories. She seems to really only remember how to make pies and the melody to a song that she used to sing when she was making pies back when she was queen. But she's there. They've found her. And it looks like they're just going to be able to take her with them until the Pie King reappears and reveals that the commoner taken to replace Meteora when Eclipso ran off and abdicated the throne, Festivia, was one of the pie folk. That Star and Moon are therefore descendants of pie folk. That's why Moon makes pies and how she knows this traditional pie folk way of making them, because I guess they teach pie folk traditions to babies or something. I don't know, it doesn't really matter. The Pie King seems like he's willing to let Moon go if she chooses to go, but Moon doesn't want to go. She's comfortable here making pies for the pie folk, but then Star takes a second and sings with Moon and helps her make a couple of pies, and Moon starts to remember. Now she wants to leave, and even though the Pie King doesn't want her to, she does. They're able to get her out and take her home. Already the search for Moon is over. The second half of this episode is definitely a lot stronger than the first, and I'm counting the first little twist that the episode went on past the halfway point as part of the second half of this episode. If you count that as a twist, there are technically two nice, nifty little twists in the second half of this episode. We learned something about Festivia, which was pretty cool. We learned something about Moon and Star, which was pretty cool. And Moon and Star get a really neat little character moment here that I liked a lot. I'm also super happy for River that he has his wife back. I've really grown to like the guy over the last couple of episodes, and seeing him happy makes me happy. The problem is, this feels rushed to me. I mean, I didn't expect it to take the entire season or anything, but I still expected it to take them longer than 40 minutes to get her home. Like, I know it was much longer than that in-universe, but I expected it to take longer than 40 on-air minutes to get her home. That there would be more mystery to this. Like, I'm glad they didn't draw it out longer than they absolutely needed to, but it just feels underwhelming at this point. Especially considering that we see in the upcoming next couple of episodes that she gets almost all of her memories back, if not all of her memories back, pretty much immediately. That isn't even dwelled on at all. I'm still expecting / hoping that there will be some lasting ramification or consequence to this happening, to her memories being lost and her being lost, even for this short amount of on-air time. Because otherwise, I'm not sure what the point of it was. Was it just to give Star a chance to hand the throne back to Eclipsa? Because they could have come up with a different way to do that. A way which didn't tease this as if it was going to be this big mystery when it wasn't. And, like, it's not even as if Moon needs to be back so soon for some immediate story purpose either, because, to spoil the next episode very briefly, again, she doesn't even stick around. She and River go off to live on their own. So it's not like she's there to mentor Star or whatever. She's effectively removed from the plot, just like she was when she was actually removed from the plot. It just feels like such an anticlimax. Moon was lost in the realm of magic, and so this plotline seemed to promise that we would learn something more about the realm of magic, and it fizzled out before we got that chance, and that disappoints me. The reveal of Festivia's nature, I guess, was interesting enough that this plotline at least feels worthwhile enough, but it wasn't quite enough for me, if that makes sense. I wanted something more. Still, this was another really funny episode that did a really good job, just like the previous episode did, of keeping the serious stuff in the forefront and keeping the comedy sort of to the background. It was just kind of happening around everything else, and it struck just this perfect balance that made it feel like you could laugh at an episode which was otherwise serious, and yet still take it seriously at the same time. I also think that this episode exists, at least in part, to ensure that we don't like most of the Pie Folk, and I say most only because Star and Moon are technically Pie Folk, and Fool Duke is a Pie Folk. Because if my theory that it's going to be the humans who end up being the problem at the end of this season turns out to be true, I think it's going to be the Pie Folk who are the instigators of that. I think they're supposed to be the villains of this season, at least the closest thing to villains that this season actually has. So all in all, not an awful episode by any means, just one that subverted my expectations in a way that I did not find enjoyable. As per usual, though, I'd like to know, what do you guys think of Escape from the Pie Folk if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below or over my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later. Actually, strike that for just a second. I do want to let you guys know very, very briefly what this week's gonna look like, with me having been sick over the last few days. I really want to catch up on these Star reviews, so I'm setting everything else aside, pushing it off until next week at the earliest, so that I can get these Star reviews caught up. Except for this Thursday's theory. I'm still going to try to get that out, but Star even takes priority over that. If I think I need the time to get Star reviews done, I'm going to take that time to get Star reviews done, too. I just want to let you guys know, and I forgot to tack it on at the beginning of the episode, which only left me with the option of tacking it on to the end. But either way, once again, I will talk to you guys later.